In this tutorial, I'll show you how to color a pencil drawing made in Clip Studio Paint using watercolors in Rebelle. That's coming up next. Thanks for joining me. I'm Aaron Rutten, and it is my mission to help artists like you enjoy digital art and learn some new skills along the way. Quick disclaimer, this video is sponsored by Smith Micro, an exclusive distributor of Rebelle. I'm going to start with a drawing that I created in Clip Studio Paint. I saved it as a Photoshop PSD and then imported it into Rebelle. The drawing is on a locked layer, and below that I've created a layer for masking, and beneath that a layer for color. I'm going to select a brush called Masking Fluid, which is a custom brush that I created, but you could really use just about any brush for this. I'm going to select a nice bright color that I can see, and I'm going to make sure to paint on the layer that I intend to use for masking fluid. Now essentially what I want to do is just paint to build a wall surrounding the area that I want to trap the paint within. Pay careful attention to where you're masking because you only really need to mask what is essential. So I've accidentally kind of gone up into the hair here just out of habit of painting in backgrounds and things, but I actually don't need to paint in this area. I need to paint over in the hair right here. So just focus on surrounding the area where you want to trap the paint and don't worry about anything else. Next, I want to thicken that wall I painted a bit to avoid painting outside the masking fluid when I apply watercolor later. Next, we'll look in the Layers palette, and we want to select the masking fluid layer and click the M to designate that as a masking fluid layer. We also want to choose where we're going to be applying paint to. We're going to do that on the color layer, so we'll add a dot to that. We'll make sure to remove the dots on the other layers. I'm going to paint with the watercolor mop brush, and you can use any skin color you like, but make sure to choose a lighter color because it's going to build up on itself and get darker. Now if I reduce the opacity of the masking fluid layer, you can see that it's containing the paint within that area and the paint's not going outside the masking fluid. And you can go ahead and reduce the opacity or increase the opacity anytime while you're working. I'm going to make sure to go back to that color layer, and that's the layer that I want to be applying paint to. And I'll just continue adding in some more skin color here. Now as you paint, this watercolor paint is going to diffuse, or it's going to run or trickle or flow, however you want to think of it. And if you're not careful, it can kind of flow out of control, and you may not want that effect, you may want that effect. It's really up to you. So in order to control the diffusion or the flow of the paint, you're going to want to fast dry or dry the layer. If I choose fast dry here in the Layers palette, then I can go ahead and dry the paint while keeping the canvas wet. That will stop the paint from diffusing, and I can select some other skin colors here, such as some rose colors, and I can put that in the cheeks and around the eyes and the nose and the mouth. Now if the water gets a little bit out of control or you don't like the effect that you're getting, you can always use undo to go back a few steps before the diffusion occurs. It's best to do a little bit of painting at a time so you can more easily control the diffusion. You can also dry the layer to dry the paint and the canvas at the same time. I'll add a little bit more rose color, and now it's reacting as if the layers underneath are dry. Next I'll add some more skin colors in the shadow areas to create form. I'm using kind of an orangey color here. And if I happen to overpaint an area or I put paint where it doesn't belong, I can always switch to my eraser and I can erase those areas. If we want the eyes to look natural, they are going to need some color, so I'll use just a lighter version of that skin color. And I might add some color to the iris of the eyes as well. Now I do notice that I missed a spot on the lip with my masking fluid, so I need to go back to the masking fluid layer and edit it just a bit so that it's making sure to let me paint on that area of the lip there. And then all I need to do is just go back to the paint layer now that the masking fluid is adjusted, and I can paint, and my paint will stay within that mask. Now let's enhance some of the shadow areas. I'm going to select kind of a bluish gray color like this, and I'm going to paint in those darkest shadow areas on the face and neck. And again, if your paint starts flowing out of control, just do some undos or fast dry or dry in order to stop the diffusion wherever you'd like it. I'll just add a few more little small shadows here on the face. I'll also choose a darker, more saturated flesh tone color, and I'll put in some of that in a few of the shadow areas just to help those look a little bit more sunken in. This adds more form and contour to the face. And again, I'm ready to fast dry it, that way the diffusion stays right where I want it and doesn't flow out of control. Now you can use the blender tool or your finger if your tablet supports touch to go ahead and blend some of those harsh transitions to smooth them out. And if you built up the paint too dark in some areas, you can also switch to lighter colors or white, and you can essentially use that to remove some of the paint or lighten the paint. So I think that's all I want to do with the skin. I do want to go ahead and repeat this process for the hair now. I'll need to create a layer for masking fluid for the hair, and I'll need to create another layer for the hair color. And just like before, I need to enable the masking fluid layer for the hair, and I also need to target the hair color layer. This time we're masking the hair and concealing it from the face. If you want, you can also erase from the masking fluid. The masking fluid is wet, so you may also want to dry the masking fluid layer, that way it doesn't bleed too much. And just like we did with the face, we can paint into the hair now. I'm going to go ahead and select this pinkish color. I'll put some pink streaks in, then some aqua streaks, maybe a little bit of blue and purple. I'll make sure to fast dry that so it doesn't flow out of control. I'll go ahead and disable that masking fluid layer. There's a few places that didn't get any paint, and I'll go ahead and just blend those areas. Depending on which layer I select, I'll be able to blend the skin or blend the hair. That just helps fuse those areas together. Now this next step is sort of optional. I'm experimenting here to see if I like the way this looks. I'm going to go ahead and go to my pencil layer. I'm going to open up my stencils. I'm going to click on the top right of the stencils, and I'm going to choose Create Stencil from Layer Alpha. That's going to look at the pencil layer and select just the pencil. And it's made a stencil out of the pencil. Try saying that 5 times fast. Now we'll need to go ahead and hide the visibility of the pencil layer. That way we can see what the stencil is doing. It's going to be concealing the area that's that reddish color, and in the white area we can fill it in with some paint. I'll do that on a new layer that I'll call Color Hold. In the top right of the stencils panel, I want to make sure that I can still use the stencil while it's hidden, so I'll go ahead and activate that option. And then I'll hide the stencil. Then I'll go ahead and paint with the watercolor mop brush using darker colors to essentially replace the pencil with watercolor. And I'll need to paint over everything here. I'm using appropriate colors like darker aqua for the aqua part of the hair, darker magenta for the magenta part of the hair, and so on. Now you could leave it like that, or you could turn your pencil visibility back on and you could try to find a blend between the two layers. I might experiment just to see the different kinds of looks that I can get. I often work this way and just try it. If I like it, I keep it. If I don't, I scrap it. And that's the beauty of working digitally, is that you can do that. So ultimately, I found that overlay works best for the blend mode for the color holds, and I've gone ahead and kept the pencil visible. We'll go ahead and just touch up the color holds here in a few places. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to wet the hair using the water tool because I want the paint of the hair to run just a little bit, kind of like it's dyed hair and it's maybe leaking dye. I want to go ahead and hide the visibility of the water and then paint over the hair with the water tool. Then I'll go to the tilt panel and I'll just tilt the canvas a little bit to let that paint run. And once I'm happy with the dripping, I'll go ahead and just dry that. I'm going to add a little bit more color to the eyes, maybe some of that light blue color to create kind of a bit of a shadow. And then I'll create a new layer at the bottom of all the layers, and I'll call that BG for background. I'll select the Splat watercolor brush and a light blue color, and I'll just paint in some background here. I'll make sure not to go onto the face or the hair. And I'll fast dry it pretty early on to stop the diffusion. I think that looks pretty good. It adds a little bit of detail to the background, but isn't too distracting. Then the last thing I'll do is I'll use a darker color just to go ahead and put in some shadow areas near the base of the skull on the hair and on the ponytail. That'll help them look more three-dimensional. I might also blend this little drip near the back of the head just to soften some of the edges on that. And I'm going to go ahead and blend the drip that's on the very end of the ponytail just to shorten that a bit because I don't like that. And I think I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. I hope you enjoyed this watercolor coloring tutorial. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel to get access to lots of other digital art tutorials like this for Rebelle and lots of other digital art applications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.